Hello, and welcome to the Innovia Conversation. I'm Steve Waltz.
And I'm Jeff Progulski.
And Jeff, today we're not going to talk about CRM.
I don't believe it. I do not believe it. What are we going to talk about today, Steve?
It's we're going to talk about something that a lot of our clients, I'm sure, will be excited to hear. We have our friends from Dynamicweb on. Today, we're going to talk with, we have Sarah Lyons and Ryan Mead on today. Guys, welcome.
Great. Well, thanks so much for having us. We're excited about the conversation.
Nice. And we've been partners with you for a while. I think I've been here for 7 years. I remember one of the first presentations I went to was a Dynamicweb presentation. So, just connecting people to sell more stuff, right?
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. That sounds about right. I've been here just at about 8 years, and I think that goes back to some of our initial conversations with you and your team. That's right.
Well, great. So tell our listeners a little bit about yourselves and Dynamicweb, if you don't mind.
Sure. Well, Sarah and I both work on our partner team, working with companies like Innovia to help identify opportunities for their customers where Dynamicweb can fill a gap or solve problems. So Dynamicweb at its core is an e-commerce platform that also has content management, product information management, and digital marketing, all baked together and integrated to ERPs, Microsoft Dynamics Stack, for example, especially with Innovia customers, we spend a lot of time integrating to BC and F&O and really Nav even and back to AX, et cetera. So that's where we spend most of our time from an integration perspective. And look, because we have that, everything together inside of one solution, really cut down on some of the integrations that our customers see before they get to Dynamicweb, or they're maintaining a lot of those different integrations.
And so when I was on your website, so like if somebody's saying, okay, I got all these products, I need to get to the 21st century, I want to sell them online,
Yeah.
right? And it's not just here's listing my product, here's the price, and buy it. I mean, your solution seems so much more powerful than that, right? I mean, obviously connects to Business Central or Nav on the back end on it, but it seems like the capabilities of your system is pretty strong. Maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the capabilities of what you guys do.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right, Steve. It's more robust than like just a shopping cart, right? I think e-commerce in the past was really just a shopping cart, right? And then there was a period of time where people were excited because their shopping cart was integrated to ERP. Well, now there's a lot of solutions out there that you can add stuff to a cart and check out, right? So I think one of the things that sets Dynamicweb apart, not only do we have that live integration to the ERP for things like pricing and inventory and so forth, we really spend a lot of time, in particular in the B2B space. And in the B2B space, we see a lot of different needs, things that are a little bit more robust or maybe a little bit more complicated than just adding something to your cart and checking out, right? So complex inventory rules. One of the Innovia customers that we work with, for example, they are in the horticulture industry, right? And so their local greenhouses, right, local nurseries go on and they buy products from the distributor, but they're buying out like next May and they're filling up a whole rack, right? They have to fill up a rack. And how big is the plant? How much space does that plant take up on the rack? And I only get my products or shipments on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So those are the types of things that Dynamicweb can bring, that type of business logic that's supported in BC, but bring that user interface to the Dynamicweb so that customers can actually experience that and make those buying decisions online. In the past, it was really hard. You're right. You had to call somebody to place those orders. So a little bit more demand on a sales or customer service team. And we're starting to see the ability to automate some of that and bring that more complex user behavior to the web. So that's one example, of how we set ourselves apart, specifically in the B2B industry.
So we'll get one of the things that the conversations we've had with a lot of our clients or prospective clients is we get some small clients, right? They're looking at Shopify or they're looking at other custom made type of things, and the analytics seem to be more coming up now, right? Because like, all right, we've listed, we sell, like, you just kind of got into some great examples, right? We wanted then size, space and stuff. But are you hearing more from your clients about, okay, I can run reports out of Business Central on it, but I want to use the data that we're giving you, and we're doing all this to kind of get more analytics to help us make better decisions. Are you having more of those conversations?
Yeah, I think we are seeing a lot of those conversations, Steve. And I think in particular, people are using kind of disconnected systems, right? So a lot of times in the web world, a lot of times we have our own data sourcing, our dashboards, reporting kind of native to the Dynamicweb platform. But a lot of our customers are using Google Analytics, for example, or Google Tag Manager or Facebook Pixels, right? They're using all of these SEO driven tools to increase traffic, to increase click rates, to increase time on the page. And so one of the things that we see a lot, Steve, is where we're taking the data that we're pulling from Dynamicweb and feeding it into like a Power BI, for example, where then customers that are already using the Microsoft Suite are, also then feeding that data from BC, for example, into a Power BI and then pulling in information from like Google Analytics. So we're seeing a move to people that are looking for consolidated reporting, and consolidating analytics. And the ability to really feed that data inside of that Microsoft Suite is one way that we see people solving for that.
And Jeff, I know you've done a lot of demos. Have you done demos side by side with them, or have you seen like an evolution over the last several years on what clients are asking more to see when we're talking with them to do a demo for us?
I would say that in the pre-sales process, we have to limit the scope of how many rabbit holes we go into. So even though in a lot of cases, especially for predominantly online businesses, that sort of conversation is maybe the most important one. For a lot of the opportunities that I've worked, it's we don't get into that level of detail, but certainly it seems like each and every opportunity has a component of e-commerce with it. I think it's just the reality that we live in now. So I guess for me, when I start to figure out, we have customers and prospects who definitely are interested. And for those customers, for those that are listening, how do you help sort of determine the scope of what a project with, well, let me take a step back. When we implement, are you a partner that you do your own stuff and then Innovia helps integrate that into the overall project, or does Innovia do a lot of that work? How does a project start, I guess, would be my first question.
Sure. Unpack a few things there. We start a project by partnering with our partners like Innovia, and setting up an initial discovery session with the customer, an engagement that we go through. And I know you all use a similar process, right, as you're going through your ERP discovery. So we, unlike some other e-commerce solutions, we spend some time with the customer up front to really flesh out the details that they need, right? We can float a number in terms of what an implementation would be and the cost and the time to deliver it. But at early on, we really know very little details. So we typically spend a couple days on site, or 4 or 5 sessions remote. So it's not a lengthy process. It's usually about a week of effort where we get those scheduled, get a solutions architect, project manager, integration engineer, and really go through what the needs are for the customer, driving them to as much base functionality as possible so that we can really help dial them into a more refined statement of work. We don't come in, or try really hard not to come in with like a low quote. Unfortunately, I think sometimes that scares customers away, but we really want to come in with a more realistic number, Because let's be honest, nobody likes it when you double up your project cost with change orders, right? On stuff that you thought was going to be included in phase one. And we don't think it's really good for our Innovia with our relationship with Innovia, right? When we're doing things like that either. So we really try to avoid that, and probably a little bit different than how other e-commerce solutions go to market. We also have, you mentioned, Steve, other customers that are looking for some lower cost solutions. There's definitely low cost, add to your cart checkout options out there. One of the things that Dynamicweb has done to address that is we've built this really amazing framework of low code, no code starting point. 6 years ago, 7 years ago, when we started working together, almost every front-end website that Dynamicweb did had a lot of custom elements to it. It was based on our e-commerce engine, but you had to really design the front end. Now, over the course of the last few years in particular, we've made a lot of refinements to have this tool set, drag and drop stuff. Even I can build a website, right? I can configure the website by checking boxes and dragging content, setting up new content using some of these templates. It's still fully extendable. So sky's the limit in terms of customizations. But for somebody who's looking for a low cost and faster time to market, we've really built this set of tools to help get out to market quicker for those customers that maybe aren't looking to spend a lot, or they want to do an MVP, like a minimal viable product, to get live, and then they have a roadmap, to build out future functionality.
That's great to hear. Actually, having discovery calls with your clients to give them a quote that's actually going to give them what they want. I mean,
yeah,
it's good to hear because I mean, we do all that a lot on the partner side, right? We got other partners giving people quotes, and it's like, oh, you wanted to do that? Because some of the hardest things is that people want to rush into it all and do it all at once, right? And
totally.
You got to slow people down, but having those conversations up front, because what we find a lot of times is the customers don't know what to tell us sometimes, and we don't know what to ask. So it's ERP and what you guys do. You're learning through that conversation. So is it common for somebody that does an e-commerce implementation to really, a year from when they go live, they do a lot more afterwards, or is it pretty much they kind of get set up and hopefully it does what they do? I mean, I'm sure it's probably all over the map for you.
It totally. For us, e-commerce is really a lot bigger than just a shopping cart, as I mentioned, right? So there's customer portal functionality, ability for like dealers to pay invoices online, invoice order tracking. A lot of our customers may go live, Steve, with like a B2B simple site, but then maybe 6 or 8 months from now, they're adding a B2C site, right? Or they're expanding to a new market and spinning up a little micro branded site for one of their higher end dealers that wants a look and feel that represents, their brand, for example. So we do have some customers. I was actually talking to one yesterday who finished their implementation and then they don't really make many changes for years. And then we have customers who have a really rich, robust roadmap to where they want to get to market with that minimal viable product. And then every, couple months, 6 months, year, they're adding on and expanding their digital roadmap. And what we don't find is customers that leave us because they hit a limit, right? Sometimes you see that like, hey, I can't, this product that we have no longer really supports our needs to give more robust B2B functionality or to spin up multiple sites with different looks and feels at a reasonable rate, and so Dynamicweb, our customers typically they don't leave because they're hitting limits. We can expand with them as they go forward on that phase next.
What other questions you have, Jeff?
Well, from without getting into too many of the gory details. I'm also the licensing specialist. So
Sure.
How is this? Is your solution, obviously the project depends on complexity and scope, but the actual software that connects that, is that sold based on a certain number of transactions, or is there any metric to how it's sold?
Yeah, great question. So our license are based on the modules in Dynamicweb that you use, and how many websites you have, to boil it down. So if for customers that really want a true content management e-commerce solution, maybe they're not interested in a product information management system because they don't have the rich product information management needs, or all their product data is already in the ERP and they're not feeding that data out to third-party marketplaces like Amazon. So we can shut that module off and they don't pay for it. But it's a multi-tenant user or license, so they can have as many people in the back end of Dynamicweb doing work and administrative work, and they can have as many users on the front end, and it's not transaction based, so we're not taking a cut of transactions.
Great. Okay, thanks. Also, so you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but the so customers that have a great website right now and everything is fine. They don't need, they've spent lots of money with a marketing firm or web developer and they have exactly what they want, but they don't have it connected to their ERP in a meaningful way. You can help those customers as well as customers who, have a really horrible website that they want to retool and connect to their ERP. I mean, do you have that fun, or do you not do that part of the project?
That's a great question, Jeff. So our integration sits outside of the ERP. So when we integrate via web services to the ERP. And as a result, we can stay out of the way. Like when BC upgrades, for example, Microsoft's path of just continuous upgrades, we stay out of the way. Our customers call us and say, hey, you can ignore alerts this weekend because we're upgrading, and that's about it. They don't have to touch the front end. So in that way, we're decoupled from the ERP. And we have our native integration framework. So everything that we connect through is Dynamicweb native functionality. We don't use like a third-party connector. Some of the e-commerce solutions are using that third-party connector. So those are some of the pros of helping a customer that wants to revamp their entire website. But for a customer who's already operating and just looking for an integration, we don't do just that segment.
Got it.
Yeah, we do operate in a headless way. So there is an opportunity, Jeff, if they wanted to connect to Dynamicweb through our APIs, where we could feed information like product data and get order information back, and then leverage that to connect through an ERP. So it's possible, it's just not common.
Okay. Yep. And that's sort of what was my question.
Yeah.
As we, the sales team at Innovia, we spend time learning about these products to the appropriate level of a sales team.
Yeah.
And which means not overly technical, but in trying to identify opportunities and where, when it comes to an ask from a customer about e-commerce integrate, what's a good fit, and when should we be, bringing in Dynamicweb? How do we qualify the opportunity from a budget perspective and all of those things? So, I guess understanding this kind of the scope of your projects is and how far they go is helpful. Steve, I'm going to bounce it back to you. Don't ask him about CRM, but I know you have some. I know you have some other questions.
Well, speaking of, so like I saw on your website, you integrate to like Dynamic for Sales or AX, all these different other products, right? One of the things that when I thought of Dynamicweb when I first started was that you guys were well north of six-figure integrate, of getting you guys set up to go. And what you kind of alluded to earlier was that you were heavily customized for people's websites. Now you kind of brought that in; it's more out of the box. Having our conversations with our clients are like, okay, tell us what you're looking for in this. It seemed like over the last several years that where your price points have come down quite a bit, right?
Yeah.
And I think some of that, and maybe you can touch on a little bit that because some of the clients that we have are like, maybe they don't need a portal in the back end for their vendors, right? But it has that capability, but maybe they're going to grow into it. So I think maybe you can tell us a little bit more of what you've done the last couple of years to kind of bring that price point down to where it's more to, hey, we're below six figures on a project.
Yep. That's a great question, Steve. So we definitely have some starting point options that are south of six figures. So that's a great place for us to be. Fought hard to get there. Some of the things that we did, again, those tool sets that we have that lay on top of our framework that give that drag and drop, what we call configurations, right? And I think we're seeing a similar move like in the BC space, right? They're trying to do more things, BC, Microsoft in particular, right, on staying with standard functionality, trying to do more things with less customization needs, right? And Dynamic Web is driving that same message. Let's use and challenging our customers differently than we did 6 years ago as well, right? To say, hey, our platform could do that, but if you did it like this instead, it's going to do it with a click of a button instead of 4 hours of development work. So we've changed our kind of methodology on how we talk to customers too about what's supportive natively. That rich tool set that I mentioned earlier, the drag and drop functionality has helped a ton, and that gets more rich every year as we're adding new features and new functionality. And then our integrations, right? So in particular with BC, we're seeing a lot more streamlined integration than when we were integrating, let's say 7 years ago to AX. And every time you encounter a new environment, it's just spread full of customizations. And so that BC just mindset and the what's available out of the box in BC has really also helped us to streamline our integrations, which ultimately then keeps costs down as well. So I think in those three areas, our approach, the tool set that we've built out, and streamlining our integrations is where we've seen a lot of our cost savings to help people get to that MVP. Now, we can't do 15 websites and rich product information management and some of those things all for that price, right? So there
Right.
is that idea of a starting point, though, that can still be cost effective, but not where customers aren't going to have to re-platform in 3 years because they hit a ceiling, right? They're going to be able to get to market now, and then over time they can build out and add that additional functionality.
And I know you guys came to our customer conference. One of the things that
It
we
was great.
do with our clients is, we try to make them as self-sufficient as they can be, right? Because
Yeah.
the more that you have all this technology, and ERP is, the capabilities are, it's just quite a bit. And using a lot of times when I talk with prospective clients that come over, they feel like they weren't trained correctly or they know the system that well. I mean, how do you guys engage, like say post go live with your clients? Do you do a
Yeah.
lot of you do a lot of education and training with them? I mean, how do you guys stay in touch with your? I'm kind of curious on how you stay in touch with with the client.
Yeah, we have actually kind of a gamut. So Innovia, one of your customers, actually wanted to do all the implementation themselves as well. So
Hmm.
there's a end of the spectrum where we came in, spent a couple of weeks, really went through a few weeks of support, met them at the customer conference, which by the way was great, and really excited to see the big turnout this past year. That was exciting, as people are getting back on the road.
Hmm.
Um, so we actually had a chance to connect with him there, and they've been running Dynamic Web now for a couple years, probably 2 or 3 years now, and they implemented it themselves, and they use our documentation website to continue to roll out new features and new functionality. That customer is pretty hands-on and not the norm, right? But our common approach for customer engagement, especially after go live, is we want to give them the keys to the kingdom, right? We don't want them to have to call us because they need a new page on the website or because they want to change an image or change a text, right? We've heard these horror stories of people like, we just need to change our operating hours on the website and we got to put in a ticket to get some text changed. So we really do want to train them. We train them in advance of go live to how to use their system. We have the customer engaged in the process. We'll build the first or two or three templates or versions of pages and then train their team how to do it. So they're actually hands-on as part of the project implementation to start to use those tools to build out additional content. At least we encourage it. We don't always go down that path, but we encourage them to get hands-on while the project's in place because then they know more after the project goes live. After the project goes live, we have a great support desk that's here. It's US based, and so they can contact us and get more support, more training, making sure they get visibility to new releases that are coming out, what's included in those new releases. So those are all part of our post go live communication.
Oh, very nice. Because it sounds like kind of our, our client base. We have some clients that have developers, right? And
Sure.
we kind of train them and then turn them loose like you. But we got some that they don't have IT. They want us to
It's
do
totally right.
everything, and then the
Yeah,
majority are kind of in between that, right? You know,
exactly right.
on that. So that's good to hear because it's, I always think of, I had a client that they just came over recently and they want to do an implementation, and we're talking about budgets.
Mhm.
And when I told him, I said, well, you might want to budget whatever you spend 25% the next year for, to spend. His eyes lit up. It's like, what do you mean? I go, well, if you research it out there, it shows that after a major ERP implementation, that's a typical average for a budget for the first year. So
Mm,
I never heard that before, right? I'm like, well, just because what happens is you got this shiny new toy, right? And oh, it can do that.
right.
I can, there's a capability here that, oh, we didn't realize that or as you go through that implementation process, they're learning that your system can do more than they thought. And I mean, that's maybe down the road type of project, but I think having those
Totally.
conversations, right, and staying engaged with the client, it sounds like
Yeah.
what you guys do, that's very important, because people want to be led, right? They
Yeah.
because they're buying a whole new system, or they're investing in a dynamic web, and I think as they go through the journey, as I like to call it, they're realizing, yeah, I thought I wanted that in the beginning,
Right.
but I kind of want something different, right? And those are conversations we have all the time with our clients.
Yep. Yeah, we commonly come out of even that initial discovery phase, right? We come out of that with, hey, here's what we're going to go tackle for this go live. And then here's already some ideas. And oftentimes those ideas change, right? Because the market shifts or because something else becomes a priority. So we often see some of those things push out and other things pull back in. But I think product information management is a really good example of
Mhm.
customers not knowing what they don't know as they're starting to get the tool. So I think there's something like 54% of B2B companies have plans to invest in a product information management tool.
Nice.
And when you look at that, what are they doing with product information management today? Right? It either all some lives in BC or in their ERP, or at least as much as they can house without doing a lot of customizations, right? So they may be limited in product information that's available for their ERP. Or they're managing in like 5,000 spreadsheets that they're sending around via email or on SharePoint, right? And they're updating it. And then who has in different departments are updating the spreadsheet with different product lines. And all of a sudden, you're totally out of alignment on what is the master source of truth for this product, especially if it crosses over different departments. And so that's a great example, Steve. A lot of times people start with dynamic web, they start with an ecom, they start with content management because they know they need those things, right? They know they need to get their movement to online and increase sales online and make sales online easier for customers that want to buy at times that are, convenient for them without having to call a sales rep during your business hours. But they start seeing this like, oh wow, if I added these additional product fields, I'm going to be able to give this customer more information that they're calling my customer service team today to get, right? They're calling for a spec sheet. They're calling for a technical PDF, a design documents, they're calling for CAD drawings. They're calling our sales team. They're calling our customer service team. They're calling our engineering team to get that data. Well, if we had that data available in a repository, we could just feed it to the web. And when they log in, because of their login, they can see that data. So we can really reduce the calls to internal customer teams, and let them focus on things that are really important to them to help drive business or reach new markets or account management with their sales and less of this, yeah, here, let me email you a document, right? So, but they don't know that because they've never used a tool like that to help them with their business processes. So I think it's just one small example of, as you said, you get this new toy and you start being able to realize all the new things that it could possibly do and how it could help your business. So we're trying to give some customers thought leadership around, here's what we see in the market, here's what the consulting companies that we work with, here's the trends that they see that are coming. Have you guys thought about doing this? How are you doing it today? Could you save time if you did it different? All of those conversations to try to paint some vision, help them with their digital roadmap. Steve, you mentioned a marketing manager, right? Their content manager, their email manager, their product information manager. They're wearing all those hats at some of these companies because they're a one-person show trying to keep their entire e-commerce world running. So how do we help them, right? By some of the tools and things that we're hearing to help drive them and encourage them to be thinking about the future.
Because you talked about your PIM. So is that inherent or is that something you connect to?
No, it's a native product information management tool, fully functional.
Mhm.
We actually had some strong partnerships with other PIM organizations 7, 8 years ago when we first started with Innovia. But what we found is that 90% of the PIM is e-commerce database fields, right? If we want to get technical, it's e-com tables with product information. Well, guess what? Dynamicweb already had all those. So we were able to take those. Now what we did though was we built this really great set of tools on top of those database fields. So we created this user interface that makes for things like bulk editing, multi-editing, language translating, rich fields that are website specific, but you don't need in your ERP, like meta fields for keywords or titles, descriptions, stuff that SEO is going to pick up on or search engines are going to pick up on and are important to search engine optimization. That stuff, pulling that into the Dynamicweb platform. So we built it. It's been out now, gosh, probably 3 or 4 years that we've been using it. But yeah, it was an internal build. We pulled in some experts from the field and went to work.
Well, I mean, for our listeners, that's a huge advantage because you're not connecting to another PIM, right? It's included.
Yeah, you're not kidding.
Jeff, it's like the relationship management with inside Business Central. It's already in there.
It's in there.
There you go. It's there.
It's amazing when you can't underplay that though, Steve, right? Because you think about integrating, if you had a separate PIM or separate relation management system, right? You have to integrate to that, maintain that integration, but that's not just for e-commerce to the PIM, right? You're also now having to integrate from your ERP to the PIM and maintain that integration and maintain that maintenance over time. So that's, I think, one of the big values of if you're going to use a PIM and you're looking for e-com and content management, having all that together, it's a single integration, way lower maintenance over time and lower cost over time.
Oh, exactly. So Jeff, I'm running out of questions.
Okay, so I have 2 questions left.
Sure.
And do you want the easy one or the hard one first?
Man, I'll take the hard. Let me get the fastball.
All right. So maybe this is easy for you. For customers who are considering an e-commerce integration project, do you have tools or metrics that can help define an ROI on that?
Yeah, we do. We have a cost calculator actually available on our website that customers can link to and go through a process to try to get some initial cost and return on investment expenses. The real value comes in talking with some of our people to talk through, because then we can have those conversations, Jeff, about roadmap, right? What's your cost today? Okay, and then if you add this over time, if you add this over time, if you add this over time, we can really talk about that total cost of ownership over time and where efficiencies are gained, not only with the first implementation, but in the second and third and fourth as you add those, and what other systems can you remove. Some of that a tool can't do by itself, but we definitely have those tools available.
Okay, yeah, and that's sort of, like framing the, because I mean, even sometimes investing in an ERP project upgrade or re-implementation, like how do we, it's difficult for us sometimes to put numbers around that, and so I'm wondering if is it like, certainly I'm expecting efficiency gains using your tool to integrate, but then also maybe you see like improved sales because you've got more information, and so it's a combination of those sort of metrics that you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely, right? You're increasing sales, and we have not only the ability, like I said, to bring on some more complex business logic, right? If your customers are calling you to order parts or order like simple products, that can be automated. And we can leverage business logic if it already exists to do more complicated things, even to automate as much of that business cycle. That's an increase in sales and a decrease in cost, right? Because your salespeople then are going out to build market with new customers and building relationships with existing customers instead of writing down a 50 item order number and a parts order, right?
Gotcha.
So let them spend time on where they can, and then definitely decreased costs as it relates to customer service, as it relates to product information management, as it relates to automation. So just inherit and integrating your solution is going to cut down on some of the manual work that we see customers coming to, where they're putting orders in a system or updating manual information in two places, their ERP and their website. That's a huge cost savings, especially for customers who aren't integrated to their e-commerce solution today. But then you also get some big improvements with things like abandoned cart emails, right? Things that we can automate, marketing, targeted marketing to targeted audiences, where you can drive recommended products, new product releases. Because not to get too much in the weeds, but because Dynamicweb has all this data all in one place, right? We have content information, we have what are you doing on the website? What are you buying on the website? What are you buying in your ERP? What are you doing in email marketing? What products are you looking at? We have all that data available. So now, if you're a marketer, you can send some pretty targeted messages to customers to say, you bought this product with a customer service rep 6 months ago. Here's an accessory product, or here's a new product that just came out. That so you can really go after some of that targeted, and that's another way. Just one example, Jeff, of how to increase sales, right?
Gotcha. All right. Then my final question, this should be easy, but in the 7 or 8 years that you've been around Dynamicweb, what has been a favorite project of yours that you've been involved with, or that the company did? And if it's not an Innovia project, Steve is going to have to cover his ears. But
I'm good, Jeff.
but just
I'm
like
good.
I like finding out about, because the breadth of nav customers I've worked with there's all kinds of weird companies that do really amazing things using the software. So I'm wondering, just like, if you have a project that stands out for some reason.
Well, I'm going to use two projects, and they're dear to me. One is a major RV manufacturer, a leading RV manufacturer in the United States, and the other is an agriculture grain processing company. And both are from Iowa, and that's where I originate from. So our family farm, one of them is 45 minutes from our family farm, and used to play their team in soccer when I was in high school. And the other company is just about an hour and a half away from our home. So those have both been near and dear to my heart, especially as I've had a chance to build relationships with their team members, and in some cases get out to visit their on-site locations. So I'm going to take a kind of a personal spin on that question, Jeff, and give you those answers. They've been great.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, that is a certainly in I bet, helping those businesses out and seeing, using your tool to make a positive impact in their business is to people that you feel neighborly towards. That's probably really cool. Something we don't get a chance to do too often, just because we're all spread out so far. So, all right, Steve, that was it for me. I think I'm done.
When you're talking about the cart, I tell my wife, I said, if you go buy something, abandon the cart, because you'll get a discount shortly after.
Yeah. You think people would know the trick, Steve?
Yeah, well,
you're ahead of the curve.
Well, it's crazy, because I think a lot of people figure that out and learn that by doing, because it wasn't more so of doing this. It was like, in the next day you get an email. It sounds like what you're talking about. You said the logic, right? If they abandon the cart, they get an email.
Yep.
24 hours or whatever time you determined, on that. And I don't know if that's how common that is, but I learned the hard way. I'm like, boy, if I just wait another day, I get 15% off.
Yeah. The statistics are actually relevant on how you can convert abandoned carts to real carts. And some of that might be a combination of people picking up or knowing the trick, but I think there is a lot of math and statistics that show that people they get busy, they walk away, they forget about it. And if you can entice them with a little nothing, right, a 5% off or something like that, it really can capture more business. And to be able to do that in an automated way where you don't even have to think about it, even better.
Not that I would share that or tell other people. That's just between us.
Surely not on an internationally syndicated podcast.
Nice. Well, Ryan, it's been a lot of great information. And you can hear the passion coming out of what you guys do. And, we've enjoyed our relationship with you guys over the years. And maybe you can tell our listeners how, if they're interested in learning more about your offering, where to go and how to get in touch with you. I mean, obviously, if you're an Innovia client, you want to reach throughout with your customer engagement specialist, your account
Yeah.
manager, and we can connect it. But if they want to reach out to you direct, how would they do
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, great. That's a great question, Steve, and I'll echo that. We have amazing relationships with y'all's customer engagement team and your account management team. So by all means, reach out to those folks, and we're in close contact with them on a regular basis. Or you can reach out directly to me at RME, Ryan Mead, ME. So it's RME at dynamicwebusa.com or info@dynamicwebusa.com. And more generically, you can definitely get online, and there's ways to request information from our website, dynamicweb.com. I was trying to get them to get me a smaller dynamicwebusa.com, a smaller trailer after my @ sign, but unfortunately that's our domain, so I couldn't get that shortened up for us.
Gotcha. And they can find you on LinkedIn also?
Definitely on LinkedIn, myself, Ryan Mead, or Sarah Lyons. We're both on LinkedIn there, and you can keep your eye on upcoming events as we communicate those through there pretty regularly.
Well, great. If you reach out and it's because of the podcast, let them know it was the Innovia Conversation. Ryan, Sarah, we appreciate it. Obviously, you can listen to this podcast on our website at innovia.com. You can follow us on LinkedIn. And Jeff, this podcast is over.